today's talk. I think just checking the recording is working. Yeah. Okay, so welcome everybody. Today we're going to talk about Doughnut Economics and SDG. I'll give a brief introduction of myself. So I'm Benita from Hong Kong. I run a social enterprise called Encompass Hong Kong. I am a marine biologist by training, not an economist by training, but I have a very broad interest in sustainability. And I'm trying, I've done some research on this topic, and hopefully you like what I'm going to share with you today. So a little bit about Encompass. I know some of you might be the first time joining our events. So we are a social enterprise based in Hong Kong. We work with a variety of NGO and community partners. We do different workshops, which I will show with you at that moment. And everything we do is related to the UN SDG. So the picture you see here is an event we did for TEDx Encompass Hong Kong, which is a climate change event, part of the global climate down movement last year. It was quite successful, and if you want, we also have a recording that online that you can watch. So SDG, in case some of you who don't know what it is, they are the UN 17 goals that cover like climate change, responsible consumption, education, gender. So they're really broad goals. And today we will talk about how the Doughnut Economics and SDGs are related. So a little bit more about Encompass. Just these are some of the talks we do. We do talks and workshops for corporates, university, high school. So you can see the topic we do are really broad. Anything from circular economy to like cleanups to eco field trips. And we do a lot of this online webinars as well. So if you and most of this are free, and we just want to do like a community outreach. So if you go to our website, you will see other topics like climate communication or design thinking. So you're welcome to join us for any of those. So I don't know how many of you have seen this diagram. This is called SDG kick. So it's how the different SDGs are interrelated. So we can see the planet goals on the bottom. We have climate action, life below water, life on land. So these are biological environmental boundaries, which is very related to what we talk about today. And then we have the people and prosperity goals, which include like education, reducing inequality, gender, and all that. And finally, we have peace and partnership. So this is one way to look at SDG. So today's talk is really mostly based on this book by Kate Raworth. She's an economist at Oxford. And actually, the first time that the Doughnut Economics concept was being given was back in 2012. So back then, Kate wrote a paper called A Safe and Just Space for Humanity. It was a paper for Oxford. And then since then, in 2017, which I see one of you have read the book, this Doughnut Economics is really really what today's talk is based on. So it's based on social foundation and ecological ceiling of how economic will work. So today's talk is mostly based on Kate's book. So now let's first start with 20th century economics. So on the left one, you see the demand supply curve, which is some of you might have learned that in school, the classic economics curve. And we will talk about why that is a problem. There's also a lot of emphasis on the self, on how individuals behave, but human doesn't actually behave as just an individual. And finally, the economics, the purpose maybe just to grow GDP, growing GDP, but is that what really economics is about? So in the 21st century, we have seen how the economics has collapsed. We can see in 2008 that there's a big financial crisis, and it seems that our current economic model is not capable to prevent this kind of crisis event as well. So and the reason is because our existing economic model hasn't have crisis embedded in it. So there's some deficiency in our model. Another problem we can see that, and you can see that in Texas, in Europe, different parts of the world, we have the heat wave, we have the extreme weather, and really the climate is breaking down. So we are not only the economy, but the environment is really suffering. And I'm sure every of you, whether you are from Norway, London, Hong Kong, we all suffer from COVID. So the world is not in a very good place. So how do we fix that? So Kate has this quote. She said that today we have economies that need to grow, whether they not make us thrive. What we need is economies that make us thrive, not whether we grow. So the key word here is thrive, that we are thriving as a society and not just looking at indefinite growth. So that's a central core concept of Doughnut economics. So Doughnut economics is not something that just born out of like nowhere, but it's actually based on a field of alternative economics or ecological economics since the 1970s. Some of them are steady state economics, ecological economics. I don't know how many of you have read on that. If you're interested, you can read more on that. But basically, all these economics share two principles. And the first principle is to challenge the current system on its reliance on fossil fuel, resource exploitation, and inequality and socially unjust structure. And the goal is to create a diverse economy that serves people in many ways. So not only just economy, but helping to create a just society. So in the 1960s, when the OECD looked at economy, most of them look at economy as just as growth, just rising standard of living. However, by 2020, we like just 2 years ago, the policies has been shifted to more regenerative and distributive economy, and we will look at what those terms mean in a moment. So this is a very meaty diagram. And by the way, don't worry about like copying any of this. You will get the recording and the deck at the end of today. I'll send you an email with all of that. So don't worry about copying. Just absorb how many like things you hear and ask questions. And I hope you enjoy today's talk. So basically on the left here is the capitalism model, the maximum growth model. People are greedy, that there's everything is called about maximizing growth. And on the right here, where Kate Raworth is promoting is that we need to look for how to nurture our human nature, how to meet all the needs of the economy within the planets of the planet, which means the donut. We will look at what the donut means, and we'll break this down very shortly. So don't worry about this slide, just put it out there. So this is the classic Doughnut economic model. So this is really the basis of everything we're going to talk about today. So you can see that there's the donut, and there's the inner ring, the social foundation, and the outside ring, the ecological model. So the inner ring, the donut, represent sufficiency of the resources we need to lead for a good life, whether that's food, clean water, housing, education, and all that. So anyone living within that ring, meaning they don't have enough the social support, meaning they're in a state of deprivation. The outer ring is the Earth's environmental limits, beyond which we inflict dangerous levels of climate change, ocean depletion, water pollution, loss of species, and other things. So the area between the two rings, which is the green area you see here, is an ecological, safe, and socially just space in which humanity should strive to live. So where we are thriving. So this is really the basis of the Doughnut economics. How do we live within the we call the environmental ceiling, which is planetary boundaries, and inside the rings, which is the social boundaries. And by the way, like I think Kate just make this diagram very nicely, but these concepts are not new, and I'll break it down to tell you why this is not a new concept and what elements she actually combine. So the first element she combined is the planetary boundaries. So the outer ring you see in the Doughnut economics, where there is climate crisis, ocean acidification, ocean depletion, they are actually proposed in 2019 by two other scientists, Johan Rockström and Bruce Stephan. So they represent like a safe space for humanity. So like the planetary boundaries you see in the Doughnut economics is not new. It's proposed before, but Kate has integrated in her economic model. So in 2019, three boundaries have been crossed here, as you can see: climate, biodiversity, and nitrogen cycle. And in the diagram, we'll see in a short, in later, is more boundary has been crossed since then. So now this is another interesting diagram, and it's related to the SDG. So the SDG, we have different goals, whether it's gender, whether it's health, whether it's poverty, whether it's no hunger. So the goal you see in green, those are the SDG goal, and the one in the orange, they are the sub-targets of the goal. So within each goal, there are sub-targets. So you can see that within the social foundation, that almost all of the thing that is mentioned in the social foundation is mentioned in the social goals for SDGs. So you can see, and there are some targets here, the environmental targets which are mentioned in the different SDG, like SDG 12, 3, 11, and 12. So this is the new diagram. This is in 2017. So other than the 3 SDG that we have passed, 4 ecological ceiling, and that include climate change, biodiversity loss, land conversion, nitrogen and phosphorus lending. So the challenge for us now is to how do we shift to operate within these 2 limits in order to prevent ecological concepts. So how do we live within the social foundation and the ecological model? So this is just some headlines, and I don't think any of this is new. You probably had read that on the news somewhere, and you can see whether it's from World Health Organization, whether from UN. We have many challenging things on climate change, on plastic, on like animal, on extinction of animals. So these are just some really like well, it's kind of depressing, but like very alarming deadlines, alarming news headline about how our ecological ceiling has been passed. This is some national data about national donuts, how different countries fare within the donut economics. And if you're interested, whether you are from Norway or from UK, you want to check out the donut economics within your country, you can go to this website called goodlife.leeds.ac.hk. Just enter your country's name, and there will be a very nice diagram, and you can actually do a side-by-side comparison of your donut diagram within different countries. And if you can see these 3 diagrams here, we have New Zealand, which is a developed country on the left. We have China, a developing country, and Sri Lanka, which is an underdeveloped country. You can see that actually the more developed one, they're exceeding more boundaries. They're using more earth resources. And if you look at the world as a whole, this is all the a diagram of all the major countries in Hong Kong, in the world. You can see like here on the left corner, you have the more underdeveloped countries. In the middle is the developing countries, and on the right is the developing countries. And you can see actually the sad fact is none of the countries have actually fulfilled the Doughnut economic model. None of the countries have or have lived within the ecological ceiling and the social foundation. But that is not to say that in the future we can't do that. This is just saying that we have a long way to go. So this is the central rationale between in Kate's book about the 7 principles of the Doughnut economics, and why the current economic model doesn't fail to address our current economic need. There's a lot of word in this diagram, and don't worry about it. I will break down each of them with you one by one. So the first one, the GDP one, we kind of look about that. GDP, the maximized growth is not good for our economy. We need to look at the donut, which we talk about that. So the second one is self-contained diagram. So traditionally in mainstream economics, there's a circular flow diagram, like the household is surviving on the business, and then the household, when they spend more, they will consume to the business. So it's a closed loop. However, in this closed loop, the energy, the material, the natural world, and the society needs are missing from this model. So this is an incomplete economic model, but this is the traditional model. And this really failed because the model doesn't take account of pollution, doesn't take account of natural resources. It doesn't take account of the unpaid work of carers, especially women. So this is not a adequate model to describe our economy. A better model is this one. This one is an embedded economy, and the difference from the other diagram is that the economy is embedded within society and the earth. So you can see that there's a flow of the solar energy, a flow of the material, and there is more than just how the consumer work or consume. So this is a more complete diagram of how economy work. So this is one of the principle of the Doughnut economics. The second principle is the rational economic man. So traditionally, there's this concept called the Homo economicus. I'm making this up. It's a hypothetical concept that humans are self-centered, self-interested. They always act in a way that maximize their satisfaction. For example, because of this way, the economists assume that the law of supply and demand is what the human will act. It is this concept of economic man is first developed by early thinkers such as Rene Descartes and Gottfried Lambisty, but it's not not sufficient to describe human nature. And the reason is actually human is not only self-interested. We act in many different ways. We want to help others, so we reciprocate socially. Our value also change depend on the situation. We also sometimes our decision is not all rational. Sometimes it's very irrational. We also depend on others on our thinking. So the rational economic man is not able to describe all our behavior. This is one problem with the current model. So the next one is mechanical equilibrium. So this is the standard growth and supply curve. As you can see, this is like physics. There's an equilibrium, how like the supply and demand work. However, this really blinded the financial crash, and it doesn't explain the complexity behind the economics. So another way of thinking about it, and this is really related to system thinking, is how economics is not just acting in one direction; it's acting in like this balancing and reinforcing loop. For example, wealth inequality is fed by this reinforcing loop. It's more easy to make money if you're rich than you're poor. I won't explain the diagram on the left in detail. It will take some time to explain. But if you're interested in like this type of thinking, there's another talk that I did recently. It's called System Thinking, which explain how these loops work. But the central message here is like there are many factors affecting the economy and the system, and we cannot just look at it in a very simple graph. So another one, I don't know how many of you have seen this. This is called the Doughnut curve. So this is this economist back in 1955. He was looking at income distribution in US, UK, and Germany, and he saw a pattern that as economy grow, income inequality rose at first and then fell. So it looks like an upside down U here. So the underlying message of this diagram is that rising inequality is an inevitable stage towards economic success. So it seems that it's unavoidable for us to have inequality if we want to grow the economy. But is that really true? So another way of looking at the economy, other than just looking at just growth indefinitely, is a distributive by design or a network of flow. So how that that share value can be shared more equitably among those who need to help generate. So for example, in digital communication or renewable energy generation. So 21st century economists have sought to see how we distribute the sources of wealth. So whether it's land resources, in money creation, in only enterprise technology and knowledge. And I'll show with you some really concrete examples shortly. So these are some examples in the community that have used distributive by design. So the first example is the community wealth program in Preston. So in Preston, that workers are paid a living wage, not a minimum wage, and employers invest in skills and training, and financial institutions invest in productive economy rather than financial speculation. So that's one example. Another example is fairbnb.coop. So you might have heard of Airbnb. This is called Fairbnb. It means the player will return a viable economic value to the local community, and it try to keep tourism up and running in a low impact way, and encourage the cultural exchange and interpersonal relationship. And another one that you probably have heard of is fair trade, which I think a lot of you are familiar with in terms of the like coffee or different fair trade products. So this is some example of distributive by design. These are some more example, whether it's tax on non-renewable resource, whether it's decreasing the duration and cost of patents. So this is a legislative thing. You can do distribution by design. And you can also support for open source. So for example, like crowdsourcing, you can support like bottom-up businesses, community makerspace. So these are some examples. Another example is regenerative economy. So this is the traditional take, make, use, dispose economy. We take something, we use them, it become waste, and then we lost it. So this is a traditional economy. But there's more and more example of this. This is also very related to circular economy. If you're interested, how do we actually not make use? So there's no waste. Everything is being reused or restore or regenerate. This is a simplified diagram of a very famous diagram called the butterfly diagram, which is the central idea behind circular economy. And if you want to learn more, there are more resources on that. But basically here, it means everything can be regenerated. And here are some examples of regenerative by design. So for example, in EU, just in 2020, I know some of you are from London and Norway, there's the European Parliament has signaled a move to right to reports, repair. That means consumer can have the right to repair such products such as PCs, smartphone, tablets. It's part of the Circular Economy Action Plan. So by that, we are looking for more sustainability. And another example is in Amsterdam, there's also a campaign for circular building, that materials are, there's reusable materials for construction. And we will share more example on Amsterdam in a moment. And right now, I want to show you a video of growth agonistic, this last principle of growth Doughnut Economics.
In the 20th century, GDP growth turned into the overriding target of economic policy. So much so that governments, businesses, and financial markets came to expect, demand, and depend upon it never ending, even in the world's richest countries. Politicians promising a better future offer green growth, inclusive growth, smart, resilient, or balanced growth. Pick any future you want, so long as you pick growth. And so, we have economies that need to grow, whether or not they make us thrive. While what we need are economies that make us thrive, whether or not they grow. Economies that are designed to be far more distributive of value created, and regenerative, working with, not against, the cycles of the living world. Economies in which GDP, simply the cost of all things sold in the market, may vary. Sometimes up, sometimes down, in response to making that transformation. So, what would it take to make this possible?
So, yep, this is a short diagram and a short video about this concept. And if you're interested to know more, at the Kate Raworth website, there's more short videos like this to explain the concept. So basically, this diagram is to show you that growth shouldn't be our goal, that we shouldn't achieve, look for maximum growth, because that is not what the economists need. We need more distributive economy. And this is a slightly more complicated diagram, but here is basically saying that depending on the economy, so for example, low income countries need to achieve relative decoupling, meaning that their GDP should grow faster than resource use, whereas high income countries, if they still want to rise in GDP, they will need to achieve sufficient absolute decoupling, meaning reducing the resource use as their GDP growth. This slide is slightly more technical, but the idea here is we want to look at sustainable economic growth, which we manage growth within the environmental ceiling. So how do we do business in the donut so that is ecological and like socially just? So we look at some example of distributive by design, whether it's fair trade, whether it's different example. We also look at regenerative by design. This is one of my favorite diagram, and it's based on Reeds and Roland. And basically on the left here, you have degenerative development, meaning we using resource too much. So this is like the traditional conventional way of looking at things. And then we have the sustainable way, which is SDG, meaning we don't create additional harm, but to really achieve a really donut economic way of thinking, we need to look at regenerative development, where that we are doing things as nature, like circular economy. So this is quite a meaty slide, but I just want to leave you out there for you to think about, and we can come back to this in the Q&A if you have more questions. So there are 5 key traits for organization who want to drive changes in the donut economic model. So for example, look at purpose. So looking at profit at a broader value. So for example, now there are some businesses just as B Corp looking at more social purposes, looking at governance, whether looking at broader issues of risk and return, looking at network, whether to accepting the status quo or influencing supply chains and finding allies for change, looking at ownership, so whether it's stakeholder ownership or mixed, employee or open ownership, and then finance, using funders only focus to make profit or using funders that focus on existing within the donut economy. So now I'm going to give an example of how the donut economics work in real life. So an example is Amsterdam. So Amsterdam, they have worked with Kate to use donut economics to understand how the city might work. So for example, one of the issue is housing. So in Amsterdam, almost 20% of the city tenants are unable to cover their basic needs after they're paying the rent, and only 12% of approximately 60,000 online applicants for social housing are being successful. So however, so if you want to solve the housing problem, so do you want to build more homes? However, if you build more homes, that means there are also more carbon dioxide emission as well. So to solve this problem, so they were like Amsterdam is looking at ways of using materials that are often possibly to recycled or bio-based, such as wood. Another issue in Amsterdam is cocoa beans. So cocoa beans are mostly from West Africa, where the labor is highly exploitative. So that's not within the social economic foundation. So they're looking at that. And the third one is the dependence of fossil fuel. So how does the city to move on to using renewable energy? So the vision in Amsterdam is having a thriving people in a thriving place. As you can see, the word here is thrive, it's not grow. And the global impact is how do they respect the well-being of people and the planet. So to break it down, so look at the social aspect. How do people thrive in this community? What does it mean for the place to thrive ecologically? And if you look at globally, is how do we respect the rights of all people? Because Amsterdam is not a living in silo. It works with different city, whether it's importing cocoa from West Africa and all that. So how do you make sure you have fair trade, and how do you respect the health of the whole planet? So these are some examples for the how people survive within the donut. You're looking at local impact. So it's actually some of the social goals are determined by the local residents that they decide what they want the society to survive. And to look at ecological standards as well. They also use different matrix, whether it's cooling, erosion, to look at how the city survive within the ecological ceiling. And they also look at biomimicry, which is a concept of mimicking the infrastructure within natural systems, so hopefully reducing waste. So they also quantify the city footprint, whether it's nitrogen, nutrients, whether it's greenhouse gas, whether freshwater use. So they make sure they are not overusing the planet's life supporting system. And then finally, to look at the social impact globally, they look at living wages, they look at community rights to all that. So it is a very holistic model. And since then, from Amsterdam, Kate has worked with different cities to come up with different doughnut economics model for some of the cities. So these are some of the ways that they have used the city portrait of Amsterdam to change action, whether it's mirroring, look at the city holistic perspective, whether it's mobilizing, bringing the city change maker to bring about change, whether it's changing mindset. Again, I know there's a lot of word in this slide, but I just want to put it out there, and you will have this slide so you can digest it and think about it. I don't know which city you live in, and maybe we can discuss that at the end. And so I want to leave you with this. So for doughnut economics, we have a long way to go. So as I said in the beginning of the presentation, there are only none of the country actually meet all of the social and environmental targets. No countries in the have a perfect doughnut economic model, and in general, countries do more damage to the planet than the social welfare. And one example is carbon emission, which we know is closely linked to climate action, falling only by 1 to 2% per year in high-income countries. However, to reach the Paris Agreement and all that, you need 8 to 10%, but we are far from that. Another example is global economy is only 9% circular. That means only 9% of the material are getting recycled, whereas 91% are going to waste or being dispersed in the environment. So that's it means we have a very long way to go for doughnut economics. So to do that, we need to change mindset. So we and now I don't know how many of you study economy in school, or how many of your children study economy in school. The traditional model, like the demand and supply curve that I show you, is really the traditional model, how we are taught in that. And even like the most of the politicians around the world are reluctant to question the paradigm of endless economic growth, and businesses often assume that only mission is profit. So and even there are some studies that suggest that students behave more selfishly after studying economic courses, where it is taken for granted that humans are driven purely by self-interest. So how do we do that? We need to question the assumption we take for granted, and to develop a new mindset to follow the principles which we discussed today, whether it's distributive or regenerative for economies. So beyond that, we were able to see beyond the status quo. And the final message is change, inspire change. So there have been many interesting experiments and initiatives, such as open source software or local currency. And if you're interested in learning more about local community action, there's this movie called Domain. It's a French documentary come out in 2018, and it's one of my favorite movie. I think it showed a lot of good examples of how local community inspire change. But I mean, it can refer to things. So for example, in Copenhagen, it's found that littering could be reduced by 46% simply by painting green footprints leading up to the bin. So that means like even small changes can have a big impact. So that means I hope you won't give up in making a change in the community wherever you live in. So finally, there's some resources. This few links are very good resources if you want to learn more about Doughnut Economics. So I do want to end here. I've spoken about 40 minutes, and I do want to hear from you. I know we have probably we have a big group here. We have somebody from France. We have somebody from Toronto. Yeah, if any of you, and please unmute yourself if you have any comments of what I shared, or I don't know, maybe our friends from Toronto or France have looked into Doughnut Economics already and want to share what are their thoughts on this and how does that being applied in your city. Can I pick on you, Yama? It seems you are from the Key of Excellence. Do you want to share your experience in Toronto?
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, so basically I'm the founder of Key to Excellence, and we train the new generation of business strategists with sustainability at its core, and also providing webinars like you. We have an upcoming webinar on sustainability assessment toolkit, and I'm happy to share with the participants the link if anybody's interested to join.
Thank you. And have you looked into the Doughnut economic model within your city?
We might have. I'm not involved in the City of Toronto work on sustainability, but I've come across this tool a couple of times, but we'll definitely look in more detail.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Yama. Maybe Nathan from France. Do you have any? I know France also does many interesting work in terms of global development.
Yes, hello. I don't have many things to say about it. I know that in Paris there is a lot of discussions around how to make the city more sustainable, especially about public transportations. But I'm not really a specialist about those, so I won't dive too much into that.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody have a question or comment? Maybe, I don't know. Fiona, what do you think? My friend from Hong Kong. I recognize Fiona here. So I have a question here. Caroline asked, can you give us the link to the movie you mentioned at the end of the talk? Sure. So I really like this movie. I think it won some of the best documentary award. So I will show with you some examples. So some example is they interviewed this city, this small town in UK, and in that small town, you can only use local currency, so not even the British pound. So the idea is to keep economy within the city as well. So there's also another example on like urban farming or like democracy in some parts of India. So it's all about like community solutions on solving the world problem. So it's not only environmental, but different social problem as well. And these are all real stories around the world. So I'm not sure if it's on Netflix, but I'm sure you can get it in like, I don't know, YouTube or somewhere. Yeah, but this is a really good movie. So Fiona asked a question. I'm curious if you think there's any weakness in the model. It is perfect per se. I don't think there's any perfect model for anything, whether it's physics, biology, or anything. I think each model has its flaw, but I think hopefully each model is an improvement of the previous one. And personally, I like this model because I think traditionally we are taught that we need to achieve more growth. More growth is better for us, but actually it's not growth, it's thriving. We need to live within the limits. And as I'm very passionate about the environment, and as a scuba diver, I see a lot of environmental degradation. I definitely think, and I like the model in a way that it was like encourage us to look at nature more closely. I think traditionally, in terms of our industrial revolution and the way we look at economy, is very detached from nature. We don't look at recycling, we don't look at regeneration. So if we spend more time and looking at materials that are regenerating, or like in my other circular economy talk, I also share like how you can build things that are more modular. So whether it's a smartphone, like iPhone is horrible. Like iPhone, if it broke down, it's like impossible to like really break it down or use the parts. But there are now some other phones, like fair phones in other parts of, in other countries, where you can, if the phone broke down, you can use some parts and use it. So, I mean, there has been research that if we do not live a circular economy lifestyle, that even with our current emission policy, we will not be able to achieve the 1.5 degrees Paris Agreement target. So I think the short answer is Doughnut Economics is not perfect, but I think it's an improvement of our current model. So Fiona made a comment that thriving this year reminds me how thriving is just measure economic or even environmentally, but also mentally. I also wonder how we can include mental health in this discussion a little more. So Doughnut Economics doesn't have a specific mention on mental health. I think it's more about, it talk about education. Well, one of the thing I think it does cover, which let me show you the slide again, is resilience. So I think if you look at resilience more broadly, you can interpret that as mental health as well. Again, eco-anxiety is something I'm really passionate in talking about. So resilience here, I think you can sort of put mental health in this box. If we have good mental health, we'll be able to be more resilient. Yeah, eco-anxiety, I think definitely that's one of the big problem we face with all the climate change issues. So Amy asked a question: what do you think about green finance? Do you think it is a viable method to achieve SDG? I'll be very honest, I'm not a green finance expert. I have a lot of friends in that area in terms of investing or SDG bond. Again, I think it's an improvement of previous economic way of looking at finance, that people looking at green bond, looking at SDG target, looking at all that. I'm not sure it's 100% viable method to achieve SDG, and I don't think anybody have a good answer. I think everybody is still trying. I don't think there's like a perfect country or city that have achieved SDG, and maybe I'll show with you why. I'll share with you why I say about that. Let me show with you a slide I shared earlier, which I mean that. So this is not the world, but this is Asia Pacific, and that's data in 2019, and this is the SDG goals for Asia as a whole. And as you can see, in the middle is the target that we are supposed to achieve. None of the goals are achieved in 2019, and actually some of the goals like responsible consumption and production are going backwards. I don't have a graph handy for different parts of the world, like Europe. I think Europe is slightly better, but the short story is I don't think any countries have really on target to achieve all the SDG. And with COVID, it's actually, I think a lot of the problems, especially like health or like poverty has because of the unemployment has actually gone backwards. But I think green finance is a good approach. Is it the best approach? I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. Anybody else have a question, comment? And again, please thank you, like for those of you for Yama who share with us your LinkedIn, and if you feel like you want to share this your work with the rest of the group, please do email me, let me know, and I'm happy to include in the follow-up email to let this group to know the other work we do. So I've done this webinar for quite many times now, and it's very interesting with the diverse group of people that we get. I remember I did a climate collage workshop a few months ago, and there was a lady actually from Iran, and she actually works in climate strategy in her country. So it is an interesting group, and I'm very glad to hear people from different countries to share their work.
I had a small question about the scale of applicability of the Doughnut Economics model, because for now, for what I read, it was mainly applied in cities. But I was wondering whether it was the right scale to apply it, how to apply it, for example, at the country level or not, or stuff like that.
Sorry, so your question is whether it can be applied in a country?
Yes, in other scales. Had it been applied in a country or like at broader scales than a city?
I don't know if it's a correct answer. When I did my research for this seminar, I think Kate mostly worked on a city-based thing, like in Chicago or different city. I don't think she has applied in a country per se, but I do want to share something quite interesting. I have a work contact that is based in Taiwan, and he is telling me that he's actually using this Doughnut economic concept and applying to some of the factories he worked with. Using Doughnut economic, the economic ceiling and the social foundation background to measure like how sustainable the factory is. So it seems people have used this not only in the city setting, but in different organizations as well. So I think Kel, sorry, from our friend from Norway, have a question.
Yeah, Kjell, so you're not far away.
Yeah.
It's a good one. I mean, it's not very typical. The Doughnut haven't reached any country yet, but the range of cities are improving. And you haven't been into this deal, Doughnut Economic. I don't know what the two last EL is, but that's yeah, the L on the end is it's a lab. It's a sort of experimental lab where cities can meet and fit their existence within the Doughnut. So this is a step forward for the Doughnut economy, and every city can apply to join there. We are not coming. I've not been able to get our city into this cluster of cities, but it's sort of expanding the Amsterdam experiment to the world. And this is very interesting, how this will work in the future.
So Carolyn just said, thank you for sharing. So Carolyn just said DEAL. So DEAL is the Doughnut Economic Action Lab. I just shared the link here. It's also on the slide that I give. There's many resources there. I think there are some resources there about like if you want to do a workshops on teaching other people, or yeah, I think that is quite good. Brussels, do you want to share our friend from France? Sorry, I'm not getting your name right. Tudong. Okay, you guys are testing me. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Tudong. Do you want to share another climate change facilitator? Hi. You can unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Hi, Benita. And
Hi.
Thank you for the presentation. My name is like Queen, you know, like the English So it's easier than it's written down. Okay, I'm in touch with the Brussels team. It's a university team who has been commissioned by the city of Brussels to work on the Doughnut planification, like the one you see in Amsterdam. Mm-hmm. So they are in stage 1 of the process, and it's an open work. So for those who are interested, just send a mail to the Brussels team, as I done it. I have done it a few weeks ago, and they will, get you into the team. So it's very interesting. If you want to implement the Doughnut theory in your own city, but you are quite alone, as I am, just join another team, observe the work, and it's a good start.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe I'll try to join as well. I don't think, as far as I know, I don't know what my other friends in Hong Kong think. I don't think people have applied that in Hong Kong, and obviously we have our own sorts of problem right now in Hong Kong. But I'm sure many of you in different parts of the world have your own challenges. So, any final thoughts? Yeah, so you want to share?
Yes, Benita, another question. I have read in the newspapers that Kate has went to Brussels to, the Parliament and the Commission, the European Commission and the European Parliament, to present the Doughnut. Do you know, because she wanted to link the Doughnut with the green recovery, with the Green New Deal, all this process. Do you have more information about what she have achieved, or if the Doughnut will be implemented in this process?
I'm not familiar with the latest news. I'm sorry. Yeah, I might need to do some research. I know she's working on it, but how far she has gone from it, I really sorry. I'm not up to date with that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Benita.
Sorry, I'm not an expert on this. I'm trying to give an introduction, but I think the intention of today is to give an introduction for those who are interested, and obviously some of you are already working in this area, and hopefully you get something new from it, or able to meet our different friends, whether you're from France or Norway, who are working on that. And thanks for sharing the Brussels project. I think for those who of us want to learn more, that this is good. And yeah, maybe I'll just share this the deal website.
Yeah. But just know, Benita, your presentation was great, because I will use it for my presentation. Some graphs are just wonderful. So thank you for the good work, the very good work.
Yeah, you will get the slides. I will send it to you, and please feel free to use it for education purposes. So yeah, you were mentioning the deal. So this is the Doughnut Economic Hub. So there's a lot of different resource here about how do you, there's videos, there's different case study. I think this is in Barbados, in different countries. So if you're interested to learn more, please go to this website. I think this is really great resources, and I think there's different events in different countries where they are, like in Hamburg, in Brazil, how they talk about that. Yeah. But yes, hi.
Just she was talking about Kate Raworth. Just a tip: if you want to follow Kate and what she's doing, Twitter is a good platform to look for her. Then she's sharing most of her work there, and what she is doing all the time. So if you are on Twitter, you find Kate there, and you will be updated. I think that's a good tip.
Thank you.
That's where I got my information from.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you everybody around the world. I know we are from multiple time zones here, and thank you for taking time to that. I hope you all got something out of today, whether you know a little bit or a lot about Doughnut Economics. And as I said, the recording and and the slides are available to you. And please feel free to share this with your friends, your colleagues, your community. I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying this is the perfect model, but I think this is something quite good for us to think about whether to living within the ecological environment and the SDG, the social foundation. So thank you everybody for joining, and have a great evening. Thank you. Bye.